Did you know that Ethiopia recently launched its largest sovereign wealth fund, serving as the government's strategic investment arm with over 40 projects spanning agriculture, logistics, tourism, energy, manufacturing, technology, and other export-oriented sectors? In this episode of Ethiopia in Focus, I will be speaking with Dr. Brook Taye, CEO of Ethiopian Investment Holdings and a member of the National Macroeconomic Committee. We'll discuss how the entities under Ethiopian Investment Holdings are driving industrialization, creating jobs, developing infrastructure, and attracting both domestic and foreign investments. Today on Ethiopia in Focus, I talked to Dr. Brook Taye on how Ethiopia's state-owned enterprises are pushing for growth in the country. Dr. Brook, so state-owned enterprises in Ethiopia, it's been many decades, the history of state-owned enterprises. The new entrant on the scene, the Ethiopian Investment Holdings, which is the government's investment arm, initially had 26 state-owned enterprises under your portfolio. You have now added 8 more large players into the portfolio of EIH. Some of the most notable ones, Ethiopian Airlines, Ethio Telecom, Ethiopost, the Industry Development Corporation, as well as the Development Bank of Ethiopia. So these are really key players in the Ethiopian economy that are part of Africa's largest sovereign wealth fund. Considering that the concept of sovereign wealth in Ethiopia is a new phenomena, can you share with us what has transpired in terms of or precipitated its formation of EIH?
Thank you so much. In terms of EIH, the main reason for its establishment can be seen in two folds. First, we wanted to do a proper portfolio management of our state-owned enterprises. What does that mean? We want to optimize this state-owned enterprises so that we can see similar type of transformation that we've seen with Ethiopian Airlines, with Ethio Telecom in the past 5 years, and other state-owned enterprises. So as EIH, as our role as a strategic investment arm of the government still remains, but we delve into each individual SOE and we try to identify what are the opportunities for these strategic assets to grow, how are they being managed. Transparency is key, corporate governance is key. We try to find a way to create synergy among the different SOEs that are under our management. The second aspect of it is us being a strategic investment arm of the government. Prior to the creation of EIH, if the government wishes to invest in anything, either it needs to use a PPP modality, which is very cumbersome, or the government needs to find an SOE to invest as a minority shareholder or have a certain equity position in that company. But with the establishment of EIH, we can directly invest, as EIH, we can directly invest representing the government's interest. I'll give you 2 examples, our strategic investment that we're very much proud of. The first is, during COVID, what we've learned is that if you don't produce the things that you need in your country, price would not matter. It becomes an issue of availability. You can agree to pay the most expensive price, but things are not available. We've seen it with fertilizer, and we've seen it with our passports. The company that used to publish our passport put us in the bottom of the queue, and we ended up suffering as a result of our requests, our orders not being delivered in Ethiopia. So as EIH, one of the things that we've decided, we need to stop importing our passports from abroad. We need to publish our passports, do a security printing in Ethiopia. So EIH invested with Topan Gravity, one of the largest Japanese securities printing company, and we fixed that problem. Now, within the next 9 months, the factory will be operational, and Ethiopia, for the first time, will be printing its own passport. So previously, this type of strategic investment won't be available, or it's not possible. Second, we're in the final stages of acquiring an internationally traded company's stock on the Paris exchange. I think it would be the first time since Dagmai Minilik bought a share in New York in the 1800s that the first time the Ethiopian government will be acquiring an internationally traded company's stock abroad. Why do we do that? First, this is our part of our strategy to diversify in many different sectors. And second, we want to motivate not only our SOEs, but other Ethiopians as well, to look outwards, to invest. And then this is how you can expand economic growth. The establishment of EIH is what's allowing the government to do that. Not only managing SOEs, but also being a strategic key investment arm of the government.
When we look at the recent past in terms of the management of state-owned enterprises in Ethiopia, it's a very sad aspect because there was a lot of mismanagement, and part of EIH's role is looking into making a lot of the state-owned enterprises viable. What would you say has been the success as a result of those interventions that you've been doing?
The first success for EIH or the change in terms of the government view is these assets needs to be managed commercially. They're not a policy instrument. They're not a government way of, or companies that they will only solely focus on addressing some of the binding constraints in the economy or a market failure. We need to first manage them commercially. If you start from that point of view, you can always address policy issues. Ethiopian Trade and Business Corporation, for example, it imports edible oil, sells it in the market in a very competitive price, but it does it in a commercial way. Ethiopian Agriculture Business Corporation that imports fertilizer and sell it to the market, subsidized by the government from Ministry of Finance, acts commercially.
These are all enterprises under your portfolio.
Exactly. These are companies that we own and manage. And the view has also changed. When I refer about these companies, we refer as EIH as owners, where we own and manage. The previous structure of SOE management is more of an administrative, an agency looking after these companies. So we are very active owners. We get involved in terms of defining the broader strategy. We make sure that transparency, corporate governance is critical. And then from CEO to board, and with our new appointments of Commercial Bank of Ethiopia's board members, we want them to think commercially. The reason why Ethiopian Airlines succeeded is because it's managed commercially. Why don't we replicate it across all the different portfolios that we have? If we do that, then we will see the success, the same way that we've seen the success with Ethiopian Airlines. So the major departing point with this administration, with this government, is that we're managing SOEs from a commercial point of view. Again, this does not mean the government does not apply its policy, incentives, initiatives through SOEs. It will always do that. But that public service obligation or policy aspect that the government wants to address needs to be financed, identified, and addressed through a budgetary instrument. So that's the major departure from the previous administration of state-owned enterprises.
So I had earlier on stated some of the state-owned enterprises under your portfolio. Can you expand a little bit in terms of the types of assets that EIH is managing and which kind of sectors you're engaged in?
So we are literally in every sector of the economy, from logistics, connectivity, by way of Ethiopian Shipping Lines and Ethiopian Airlines. We're in finance, by way of Commercial Bank and Ethiopian Insurance Corporation. We're in hospitality. We own Hilton Hotel, we own Gion Hotel, we own Gannet Hotel, we own the spa services. We own the manufacturing sector and the chemical industry sector and the sugar sector. So we are in almost every sector of the economy.
Estimated value of?
Of several billions. So we're doing our consolidated financial report for the first time to show that Ethiopia's asset is higher than our liability. So we will make an official announcement once we have the consolidated financial report. But I want to go back to the point that you've raised, which is in terms of the different sectors. Think of it this way. When you wake up in the morning, you either do one or two things. You turn on your light or you turn on your phone. Both are provided highly likely by companies that are under Ethiopian Investment Holding. When you have your breakfast, whatever food that you eat, the fertilizer that was used for the food is provided by the company that's owned by Ethiopian Investment Holding. When you're in your car and driving your car, the petroleum product that's delivered to you is provided by Ethiopian Petroleum Supplies Enterprise and Ethiopian Investment Holding Company. Most probably you're doing any payment at a coffee shop or a supermarket using an online payment, you're using Ethio Telecom or Commercial Bank of Ethiopia's services. We are in every part and parcel of Ethiopians' life. That's why we need to manage them efficiently. So we're in many different sectors. We're in many different aspects touching people's lives. So that's why commercially managed, efficient SOEs are very critical.
Can you say a little bit more in terms of your strategy?
So
long-term vision?
Yeah. So we've revised our 5-year strategy. And we've defined it in 3 major components. The first one is diversification. Product, service, and geography. What does that mean? We want every SOE to diversify in terms of service, in terms of product, in terms of geography. It's not acceptable for our SOEs to only sell their products in Ethiopia, because we have the talent, we have the product. If Ethiopian Airlines could go and acquire shares in many different airlines in the continent, why not our construction companies? Why not our telecom companies? So our major first component is diversification. The second is drive. We need to drive economic growth. Our SOEs should be the driving force when it comes to economic growth. As I've indicated earlier, if we're part and parcel of the overall economic activity of our country, we might as well be at the forefront of driving economic growth. And the third is delivering, because we have a commitment. Just past quarter, we paid 5.8 billion birr dividend payment to the government. This year alone, we'll be contributing 14 billion birr dividend to the government. Our aim is, within the next 5 years, if we can, we want to cover the entire budget deficit of the government through our dividend payments. Through diversification, through drive, we'll increase our revenue, and our dividend payment could expand. So that will be a greatest honor for EIH if we were to cover any deficit that the government has from our dividend payment. And we're very confident that if through our investment, new investment that we're putting out there, and then the diversification that we're driving, we will be able to achieve that. In terms of delivery as well, we wanted to make sure that foreign currency generation is something that should be part and parcel of the Ethiopian Investment Holding, the overall SOE strategy. Just in the last quarter, of course, Ethiopian Airlines generated close to 2 billion, CBE around 800 million, but these are giants. Some of them is remittance, Ethiopian Airlines is Ethiopian Airlines. But the others, for example, Ethiopia Shipping Lines, it's generated $147 million. Ethio Telecom, $42 million. Even Ethiopian National Alcohol started exporting Biherawi Arake to US just last week. So what does that mean? We're diversifying. We're selling our products, not only in Ethiopia, but also to the different markets. And the foreign currency that will be generated will help our strategy of delivering economic growth in our country.
I mean, the reforms that have been undertaken in terms of really revitalizing state-owned enterprises in Ethiopia has been a remarkable journey. And some of the institutions or the establishments that you're talking about have taken quite a leap in terms of profitability. So all the work has been done. Say a little bit in terms of partnerships, joint ventures, and what does your co-investment platform look like?
So EIH, one of the most important aspects of our existence is we want to be investors' de-risking partner. If you have ever any doubt trying to come to Ethiopia and you don't know the lay of the land, you think that some regulation might be an impediment, you think land acquisition will be difficult, you think some of the regulations will be an issue, let us be your de-risking partner. That's our motto. So any foreign investor that comes in, a little bit jittery in terms of getting to the Ethiopian market, we will be the one that will be holding their hand, making sure that investment in Ethiopia, their investment in Ethiopia could be realized. What can we offer? We can offer offtake agreement. One of our SOEs could be an off-taker of a specific product that gets produced as a result of this company coming in. We will have a much better possibility to make the landing much easier, much safer, and cushion the landing, so to speak, because as part of us being a government entity, we know the difficult parts and the areas where we need to go and knock the doors and trying to explain a certain policy position to make sure that private sector investors coming in. And we've seen a result already. Our current involvement with an EV bike company, for example. The main reason that they've wanted to come and work with EIH is they've identified that they need several locations in Addis initially to introduce an e-bike swapping station, battery swapping station. So they've looked at EIH and said, you know what, EIH could help us in terms of acquiring the land. Ethiopian Electric Utility is part of EIH portfolio. So electricity connection for the charging station will be much better to be managed by EIH. There are some policy areas where they need help from ourselves. So we've created the necessary joint venture whereby we'll have an equity position. This company now will focus only on delivering its product and services and not rely on land allocation, electricity connection, or regulatory issues. So we've accelerated their market entry. So that's one of the most important aspects of it. In some areas, we, in addition to being a de-risking partner, we are also an equity partner. There are companies that we've invested cash because we get several billions of birr dividend payment from all these SOEs, and we need to manage that money properly. There are some we transmit to Ministry of Finance to cover the budget deficit, but there is some significant amount that we retain. So we're very much strong in terms of our balance sheet. We can, if we think that the investment is attractive, we're very much aggressive in terms of putting our money into investment opportunities. You don't have this opportunity in many different aspects of the economy. That's why we think that most foreign investors, domestic investors, will be interested to work with us.
I want us to really explore the significance of one of these similar investments that you talked about. A few weeks ago, Prime Minister Abiy was in the Gambella region inaugurating a gold mine, and this was done with a joint venture partnership with EIH. Can you expand a little bit on that?
So the investment that was inaugurated is a gold mine. In our view, is one of the most important investment for EIH, which will finalize and make the announcement in terms of a broader picture shortly. But we will be, EIH is putting in several millions of dollars, acquiring the shares of the company. And this investment would allow the company to utilize the money that we will be spending or investing to expand its operation in Ethiopia. So in that way, we obviously help the company to expand its operation in terms of gold refining and expanding its products, mining activities, which has a direct impact in terms of our FX generation and reserve contribution. But at the same time, it gives a very good platform for EIH and our subsidiary companies. Because if we're saying diversify, we need to diversify first. So we're diversifying. We're buying an internationally traded share company stocks in the Paris Exchange.
This is the one that was listed that you mentioned
Exactly,
earlier.
exactly. So if we're doing that, it gives other companies also the ambition to go through the proper due diligence, look at the IRR, and then, of course, appreciate the risk and really diversify in terms of their investment. So it would help us putting the money on this company to help it to invest this similar volume of money in its expansion strategy in Gambella.
One thing that I want to also for you to shed light on is another new entrant into the scene is the Ethiopian Securities Exchange. Yeah. With the stock market in the activation process, what does it mean for state-owned enterprises to be listed on the ESX?
So we started the capital market process by offering 10% of Ethio Telecom's share. That's a major milestone, a major step.
It's a major departure.
It is. It's a major departure, and even if you look at it, the way that the process has been managed to make sure that Ethio Telecom share is floated based on and relying on and fulfilling all the requirements of Ethiopian Capital Market Authority is really, really significant. This is a company of 130 years. So it's not a company that was formed yesterday. So there is a lot of preparation that needed to be done, and that was fulfilled successfully by Ethio Telecom. And obviously the 10% is listed, now currently being offered to the public. So this would help for the government to do a couple of things. One, if the equity story is there, If the government thinks that I no longer want to have this company as part of my portfolio, because divestiture is also part of our task. If there are any assets that we think that the government should not be involved in, and we get the decision from the board, we divest. So divestiture usually is by way of privatization, but that's not the approach that we're taking. We can do listing whereby you have a diversified number of people owning this share company. So it would allow us to do a very tactical and strategic divestiture strategy by using the exchange, and then really defining the most optimal price of these companies. That's one. Second, if there are companies who want to raise equity, where do they go? Bank finance, or they come to EIH and then would ask us to finance their expansion. Now they have an alternative. They can do a debt offering. They can do a corporate debt as Ethio Telecom or Ethiopian Airlines or whatever other company, and they can raise significant amount of finance from the capital market. Or they can sell part of their equity, sell it on the exchange, get listed, and raise capital. So the capital market and its introduction is an important component for EIH companies' growth. They could be listed, they could secure a much broader and larger finance from the capital market by offering a debt instrument, or offering part of their equity on the exchange as well.
You mentioned earlier about the potential for these state-owned enterprises to not only go regional, but also continental. Yeah. Giving Ethiopian Airlines as an example. In terms of Ethiopia's strategic positioning in Africa, what do you think in terms of its ability to draw capital to the country through EIH?
Yeah. So what we offer as a country, in addition to our ideal location, in addition to a very competitive labor market, in addition to a very attractive tariff when it comes to electricity, in addition to the agroclimates and the diversity of the several regions with their own unique characteristics, I think for me, for companies who are looking at Ethiopia, the domestic consumption base is already here. So think of it this way. You're trying to introduce a new product into a new market. And if you come to a country with 125, 130 million people versus you go to another country with 3, 4 million people, the traction is not going to be the same. And we've seen it. When Safaricom entered Ethiopia, it took them 4 months to achieve over 3 million new subscribers. They're growing in such a phenomenal way, attracting new customers. Where in the continent, other than maybe Nigeria, you will have a market where a growing middle class, a growing economy, and a strong macro reform that is unbinding all the constraints, all these legacy issues that used to define us as a country. Where would you have a similar market? From north to south, you can go from Burkina all the way to Angola, and you start identifying each market. The base is not there. 70% of our population is under the age of 30. This is an appetite. This is an appetite that consumes. This is an appetite that could work. This is an appetite that wanted to work. So for most companies, this is the dynamics that we see. And I always, my spiel for most investors is, don't invest in Ethiopia. If you think in the 1980s of Ethiopia, I don't want to invest in the 1980s of Ethiopia. If you want to invest in Ethiopia, understand what is happening in Ethiopia today, and then you'll see the dynamics. But in most investors' mindset, they're still stuck in the 1980s of Ethiopia, in the 1970s of Ethiopia. They have not made the transition. Our role is that. I will be your de-risking partner. I'll work with you when you come to Ethiopia in terms of your investment and providing you investment opportunities. But this is not the 1980s. This is a new Ethiopia with a much better opportunity in terms of investment and having a better return for your investment. And that makes us a unique country in that respect. And EIH's role is to facilitate, to strategically co-invest, and then ultimately to be their de-risking partner so that they can fly and with their own wings once they have a successful entry to the market.
Looking forward, and as we're wrapping up, maybe something that you want to share with potential investors about what to look out for in Ethiopia, particularly in terms of the processes that we're going in the ease of doing business and creating a conducive business environment.
So I think I'll go outside of EIH, maybe to make a reference to what I think most investors, they probably would not associate Ethiopia with the startup ecosystem. We're introducing a new startup proclamation, one of the most adventurous startup proclamation. It defines not only startup, but startup ecosystem builders, and then provides a significant amount of incentives, allows foreign startups to come and participate in Ethiopia, provides tax incentives, and designates not only the startups themselves, but the ecosystem around it to make sure that they're beneficiary of physical and non-physical incentives. So because of the many different existing problems that we wanted to resolve, our startup ecosystem is something that many different investors may not have seen or looked at properly. So you see the growth of the ride-sharing companies, you see the growth of the fintech companies. They start very humbly and then end up with 5-6 million active users. So that is a huge opportunity, especially for VCs and the venture capital funds and private equity funds to look at these opportunities. The other element is, of course, the local market as is, our proximity to huge buying power by way of the Middle East. We're very close. I mean, it's. I don't think we're more than 500-600 nautical miles away from the coast of the Middle East. If you measure it from the coast of Djibouti, we're very close, and there are so many different products and services that we can export. The other element that's very attractive that people, international investors, might not know, but it's growing significantly, is the BPO sector, the business outsourcing sector. There are huge companies that are locating in Ethiopia. And doing their outsourcing work in Ethiopia. In terms of our geographical location, we're literally bang in the middle of the earth, so we can cover both sides, the east and the western part of the hemisphere perfectly. We have a young population that really is adaptive, that can provide the services, and then EIH is co-investing with one of the largest BPO operator to do a 5,000-seat call center with 3 shifts. We'll be doing 15,000 jobs a day on 3 shifts, and this is pure FX generating capacity. So there are many different opportunities, and as I've said earlier, if you look at Ethiopia of the 1980, if you still think of the Ethiopia of the 1980, don't invest. If you really wanted to understand Ethiopia, look at what's happening today, and there's no more attractive proposition than you have in Ethiopia at this point in time.
And last thing that I want you to expand on is, I think Ethiopian Investment Holdings really offers a lot of hope for skilled youth that are coming up with really innovative ideas as well. What would you say to them in terms of where to focus on? Where would EIH be having an eye on? What areas?
So for people who are involved in innovative ideas, creative ideas, or in the startup world, we're creating a fund of funds with the support of international development finance entities. A huge sum of money has been allocated to create a fund of fund strategy that will go and invest on startups. So we'll be with you. We're going to look at many different startup opportunities, and we will support you. But second, our portfolio companies, we're encouraging them to look at young, ambitious, dynamic youth and the product and services that they can adopt. For example, we've on one of the startup events, we've discovered one of the companies, 2 young kids who started or developed a tool that would allow you to connect it with your phone to be able to measure electricity usage, and we've connected them with the relevant parties, and that conversation will lead to either investment or some sort of adoption by our portfolio companies. So we're encouraging our SOEs to start talking to many, young people who are ambition to be providing services or products. So for them, we will help them through the fund of fund structure, but at the same time, we will be encouraging our SOEs to work with them, to listen to them, and to adapt and to co-create with them, so that ultimately they will be the one that are driving the next phase of the change of the SOEs.
So basically, watch the space. With the largest sovereign wealth fund in Africa, we're going continental as well. It has a continental value addition. Yeah. And then in terms of a generational agenda, we're preserving assets for Ethiopia as well.
Absolutely. Every state-owned enterprise is part and parcel of our life. This is something that, most of our families have contributed, and a lot of Ethiopians take pride. And we want to make sure that whatever we've inherited this generation, we want to leave it to the next generation in a much better place and a much bigger place. And then we have all the tools to do that and to achieve that. And it is also a testament. The reason why we want to do a consolidated financial is to show we always talk about our debt. I'm sure you've seen TV anchors talking about, each individual Ethiopian owns $500, whatever, compared to the total external and domestic debt that we have. But nobody calculated how much each of us worth if you calculate each of these companies. These are billions and billions of dollars worth of assets. So we are much richer in terms of real physical asset than the amount of debt that each of us owe to external and domestic lenders. So we want to show to the public, ultimately when we've done our work, a consolidated asset, their value of assets. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brook.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You come across a lot of investors' potential as well as ones that have already been established here. For the ones that have been established here, can you share examples of what this new foreign exchange regime has meant for them?
For example, in terms of when investors want to, for example, bring duty-paid capital goods, construction materials, so far they were relying on Franco-valuta regimes. But however, the fact that the Ethiopian government has taken this kind of bold measure has created a very good opportunity for investors, even for existing investors, to use this mechanism and then to even further expand as well as to reinvest their investment in Ethiopia. That means, for example, rather than using Franco-valuta regime, in fact, the Ethiopian government has already imposed the Franco-valuta regime. Rather than using that one, now they can easily access foreign forex from commercial banks. The reserve that we have even at the National Bank of Ethiopia has increased dramatically. So this creates a very good opportunity for investors, for commercial banks in Ethiopia, and as well as for investors to access even forex from commercial banks. So for existing investors, it gives a very good opportunity to access forex from commercial banks.